I greet you, ladies and gentlemen, as I start this session that I was supposed to share yesterday for those of my students that I'm teaching the Master of Science in Banking and Financial Economics module, Applied Research Methodology. I just want to notify you, even as I notified you through your class representative, that yesterday I had an incident where I could not access my working profile in my normal machine that I normally use to do this sort of online work. So I've had to resuscitate a backup machine and organize materials from that backup machine while IT experts, they try to recover my files from the machine that I've been using all along. So apologies for that, but it teaches us that we should have backup storage or backup machines so that we use in times like this when our computer systems are held by malware or ransomware. So thank you so much. Today, what I want to cover are just the basic tips in writing literature review. Basic tips in writing literature review. As for my exegesis on coming up with a good research proposal, there is a video that I did on that. I don't need to duplicate that video. I'm going to send you a link during the course of today on the material that I shared on how to write a research proposal. And because I've already covered that stuff on steps to follow and points to consider in writing a good research proposal, what you are going to get is just a link to the online session that I did with one or two of the bachelor's degree final year students. The principles do not change. But what I'm going to zero in on today are certain basic concepts or tips that we need to take into account when we are writing literature review. Writing literature review presupposes that whoever is writing that literature review, part of their research project, knows what they are writing. So, but we need to come up with a working definition of literature review. What we mean by literature review. What is literature review? That's the question. One of the definitions that I found, I've got quite a number of definitions. I've been doing literature review for more than 2 decades now. So naturally, I've got quite a number of definitions from other scholars and definitions that I've distilled from my own personal experience as a researcher and a scholar about what literature review is all about. But I'm going to give you this definition that I found as I was preparing for this installment of online lectures. Literature review is both a summary and an explanation of the complete and current state of knowledge on a limited or focused topic as found in academic books and journal articles, as well as other sources of information. It might be periodic reports, quarterly digests of statistics, schedules of information, as well as online news articles, newspaper articles, and so on, including archival sources of information. There are 2 kinds of literature review you might write at a university when you're a university student. The first kind of literature review is the one that students are asked to write as a standalone assignment in a course or in a module. In a course or in a module, a lecturer may ask you to just do literature review on something. I may decide as part of your applied research methodology course given that it is a course which is entirely evaluated through coursework, I may decide to say, select a topic and do literature review, which is not more than 4 pages or which is not more than 2 pages. And that will be your assignment. And then this sort of gives you the feel of how you need to conduct literature review in order to probe, to analyze, and to actually exhaust the primary concepts that constitute a particular limited topic. And the other type of literature review is the one which is written as part of an introduction or preparation for a longer work, usually a thesis or a research report. So when you are writing a thesis or literature, a thesis or a research report, immediately after writing your chapter 1, what is normally your chapter 1, you delve into literature review. Sometimes a literature review is 1 or 2 chapters. It's normally just a single chapter for most master's degree, programs, and also for most undergraduate programs. But at PhD level or at MPhil level, you can have 2 or 3 chapters that are reviewing literature, because each theme will be having its own chapter. If your work is philosophic and it's of a thesis type, but when you are doing a research project or a dissertation, you don't necessarily need to have more than 1 chapter reviewing the literature. You'll just have just 1 chapter reviewing the literature. But when you are doing, say, a Master of Philosophy, a degree thesis, or a PhD thesis, you can have up to 3 or 4 literature review chapters. And one of the literature review chapters, a very unique literature review chapter, is the review of research methodology. Quite a number of professors and other scholars who supervise students who will be doing research or undertaking research at postgraduate level, at MPhil and PhD levels, they require that the review of research methodologies be separated from the rest of the literature review. So I know I've brought in a lot of issues, and you no longer know from listening to me what exactly my definition of literature review is. A literature review is both a summary and explanation of the complete and current state of knowledge on a limited or focused topic, as found in academic books, journal articles, newspaper articles, online articles, archival information, and so on. There are so many sources of information that one can use to provide this summary and an explanation of the complete and current state of knowledge. But basically, one uses what we call in research the extant literature in order to come up with a proper literature review. So the next question that one needs to interrogate when coming up with literature review is, what is the purpose of a literature review? Why do we write literature review? Do we write literature review as part of a tradition that you just have to write it in order to pass your degree? Why exactly do we need to write literature review? Why is it important for us to conduct literature review? I've got 3 reasons. The reasons may be quite many, ladies and gentlemen. You can come up with your own reasons as well. You know, things in this methodology course are not necessarily cast on stone, but I would profile you 3 reasons that inspire the crafting or the compilation of literature review. The first reason is just to learn about a topic in preparation for a large research project. Before you actually go and conduct field work, you need to know about the research topic. And for you to know about the particulars of a research topic, the exact parameters and the exact perimeter of a research topic, 2 things: the exact parameters and the exact perimeter of a research topic. That is the outer boundary, so to speak, or to speak metaphorically, the outer boundary of a research topic, for you to know that you may need to conduct literature review. And this literature review may be in the form of the review of literature itself when you are not actually writing anything, when you are just reading the literature. In which case, when you are not writing anything, it's normally called the literature search. The literature search, where you isolate the scholars that are key in understanding certain fundamental concepts that constitute your research topic. Because each and every research topic has got key variables that are captured by that research topic. Let us assume I'm investigating the impact of the prime commercial bank lending rates on fixed capital formation, the impact of interest rates on investment, to put it in layman's language. So if I'm investigating the impact of interest rates on gross investment, the two key variables that I need to review the literature on is the variable of interest rates and the variable of investment. So initially, I'll be starting, when I'm doing my literature review, I will start with the definition of preliminary concepts. I mean the preliminary definitions of, key concepts. The key concepts in this case are interest rate. What is an interest rate? What types of interest rates prevail in a modern economy? What types of interest rates prevail in a modern economy? What is the interest rate that we are interested in this particular study? Is there a particular interest rate that we are actually interested in carrying out this particular study? Or we are just concerned with interest rates holistically, even if there are 10 or 15 of them? Each and every one of them will be compared to cross-fixed capital formation, or there is a specific type of interest rate that we're interested in. So a reviewer of literature will review for us all the types of interest rates, and then the reviewer or the student or the researcher may then point out the one that they're interested in. If it is the prime lending rates of commercial banks, they'll point that out, so that we don't assume that they are going to use the London Interbank Offered Rate or LIBOR, because there are so many interest rates that prevail in an economy. And then next, after the student or the researcher is exhausted reviewing material on interest rates, they will go on to gross investment. They define the concept of gross investment. They trace in the literature when this concept of gross investment started to be tackled. They review for us theories related to investment. And then finally, when they've done that, the student goes on to marry the two concepts in terms of what the theoretical literature is saying about the expected relationship or relationships between interest rates or a particular interest rate and cross-fixed capital formation or investment. And then after the student has done that, the student will then, present to us their empirical evidence, where they are now they are no longer just looking at conceptual or theoretical issues, but they now also review what other researchers have discovered in studying the relationship between interest rates and cross-fixed capital formation in different countries. And the presentation of empirical literature review or empirical evidence can follow a number of approaches. I'll dwell on that when I am actually looking at the actual review of literature. What I'm giving you today is just a preliminary presentation on points to note when you are actually reviewing literature, and I've got 10 of them. Here, I'm just giving you motivation for literature review. So basically, just to summarize, the student can follow what is known as the case study approach to empirical evidence literature review, where they select a certain country or company or institution In the case of the relationship between interest rates and the gross investment, it will be countries that are selected. Say the relationship between interest rates and gross investment in South Africa. The student looks at all the, seminal authors, celebrated authors who have written on that, or all the researchers that they're able to find who have spoken to this topic on the relationship between interest rates and gross investment or just investment. And after reviewing for South Africa and summarizing information for South Africa, because they might not write everything. Otherwise, the student will end up reproducing the literature review of other scholars. The student will move on to a review of, empirical evidence on interest rates and investment in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Zimbabwe, and so on. Depending on the length of their academic report or project or dissertation, the student may be permitted to review for many countries. And then finally, they provide a summative view. That's one approach in the case study view. The other approach in the case study view is to isolate specific themes. And, under specific themes, you review for all countries that meet a particular, theme. In the case of, the relationship between interest rates and gross investment, those who believe in the marginal efficiency of capital or investment theory, all the information for all countries will be reviewed under that theme. Those who believe in the loanable funds theory, all the information of the research that has been done for different countries on the loanable funds theory will appear under that theme. So you follow the thematic approach. The most important thing when you are carrying out literature review is to be organized. So the first purpose of a literature review is to learn about a topic in preparation for a large research project. Number two, the second aspect is to review writings by other researchers on a given topic. It's very important when one is conducting research to approach it with humility. If you assume that you are the first one under the sun to actually undertake research in a particular area, you are highly likely to duplicate what other researchers have done. And when one is uninformed, the duplication might be quite poor indeed. You may discover that there have been a lot of advances in investigating a particular phenomenon, like what I just talked about. You've got the marginal efficiency of capital theory. You've got the loanable funds theory. And we have got the macroeconomic theories like the Solow model of economic growth, as well as other models that help us to understand the relationship between interest rates and gross investment. So if you have not reviewed your literature, you won't know of all of those models or theories, and you won't be able to come up with a strong conceptual framework to approach your study. When you are doing your field work, you are likely to miss quite a number of variables that other researchers have taken into account. And the contribution to the body of knowledge of your own study will be quite shallow indeed, or it will be inconsequential. Whatever you'll be hoping to contribute to the existing body of knowledge will be of no help to anyone. And then number three, you update a previous literature review. That's the third aspect, or the third purpose, so to speak, the third reason why we conduct literature review, to update a previous literature review. If you see weaknesses in a previous literature review, you can conduct your own literature review to update a previous literature review. Either your own previous literature review in a different, academic writing that you would have done, or someone else's, literature review. And then the next part is, what do you include when you are conducting literature review? Literature review is a broad survey of the extant literature on your research topic. That topic which you have crafted and you have agreed on with your supervisor to actually pursue. On that topic, you realize that there are variables that you need to isolate, which is why when students are crafting research topics, we normally discourage them from triple-barreled, quadruple-barreled, and quintuple-barreled research topics. It's better to just have a topic which is mapping out a single issue so that you are able to narrow your focus and you quickly are able also to evaluate and provide a summative view of that singular issue that you are actually pursuing, or that single issue that you are actually pursuing. If you come up with a double-barreled research topic, for instance, I can give an example of a double-barreled research topic. Initially, I gave you this research topic, the relationship between interest rates and the investment. Let us assume I make the topic a double-barreled research topic. I can say the impact of interest rates and economic growth on investment. The impact of interest rates and economic growth on investment. The topic is now double-barreled in the sense that it's no longer only one factor which is key in the research topic. Of course, you can bring up other factors when you are looking at the impact of interest rates on gross fixed capital formation. You can bring up many other factors, including policy-related factors, but the understanding of your fellow researchers is that your primary focus in carrying out the literature review is the variables that you've isolated in your research topic. No one will crucify you, so to speak, when you don't delve into other issues, because your research topic would have already managed the expectations of the reader. But if you tell me that in your research topic that you are going to investigate the impact of interest rates and economic growth on fixed capital formation, my expectation is as follows. Number one, I may expect you to relate interest rates to investment, and then expect you to relate economic growth to investment. And then I may expect you to relate interest rates to economic growth. And then I may also expect you to relate economic growth to interest rates and investment. There are so many permutations. That's the challenge of coming up with double-barreled or triple-barreled research topics, because you start to have so many permutations among variables. And each and every one of those permutations or combinations of variables, it brings about a different body of literature that can be reviewed, and a different body of theories that one has to take into account. If I take, for instance, the relationship between interest rates and economic growth, there is a whole body of, current and previous literature, the extant literature on the relationship between interest rates and economic growth. Before we talk about the relationship between economic growth and investment, So, ladies and gentlemen, it's very, very important, it's very, very imperative that when you are conducting a literature review, your literature review is predicated on on a very highly focused, a highly refined, and a highly simplified research topic. Ordinarily, words like the significance of the investigation of an evaluation of an analysis of, we don't expect such words at a final year undergrad or at final year master's degree, especially for students who are conducting master's degree level research. We don't expect people to write, frivolous and time-wasting words and restrictive words like an analytical investigation of or a critique of. Just write the variables. Interest rate the key thing may be the impact, not an investigation of the impact or an analysis of the impact. Just write the impact of interest rates on investment, or the impact of interest rates on economic growth. You avoid writing a lot of words that just waste space. If you tell me you are analyzing, what if I see you evaluating? What if I see you engaging in a discussion, and so on and so forth? You see, so, but basically, when you are conducting literature review, you do a broad survey of virtually all the existing literature on your research topic that you are able to access. We know as researchers who are seasoned in the field that it's virtually impossible for anyone to research all the available literature on a particular topic. One, time will never allow you to review everything which exists on a particular research topic. Two, resource costs. You may not have money, or you may not have the resources, either in terms of time or money or machines, to gather information from all the literature that actually exists, information on all the literature that actually exists on a particular research topic, because we rely on search engines, and these search engines, they are also used to search for other things other than literature. So many a times, journal articles that you may need on a particular research topic will be squeezed out by other topical issues, including current affairs issues or even videos. So when you are searching in literature databases, you must be sure to use the scholarly journal research article peer-reviewed limiters to get appropriate results. This ensures that this helps you to ensure that you don't write material which is not scholarly, or you don't waste your time reviewing material which is not scholarly, material which is just informal, material which is highly opinionated, and material which is not objective. So quickly, I've covered quite a number of preliminary issues, including the definition of literature review and the purpose of literature review. What are the 10 points that one needs to take into account when they are reviewing literature? The first point, ladies and gentlemen, when one is reviewing literature, the first point is that the literature reviewer, by the time they are now doing literature review, I'm not talking about reviewing literature in order to write the background to the study, which is part of your research proposal, or which is part of your chapter 1. But here I'm talking about literature review proper, your chapter 2, the chapter where you actually review literature in detail and on a more technical basis. The first part of call is that the researcher or the student must narrow their research topic and select papers accordingly. And usually the narrowing of the research topic is done when one is doing the research proposal. When you are doing the research proposal, what we call literature review before literature review, in essence, literature review, before you write the literature review chapter, when you are motivating for your start, this is where you agree with your research supervisor, or the supervisor of your research project, or your dissertation or thesis. You agree on narrowing your topic. When you narrow your topic, it presupposes that you are familiar with the specific area of your study. And when points to consider when you are narrowing your research topic are, you think about what interests you and what is the fertile ground for study. It is not wise for a student to research. It is not wise for a student to research on a topic which has been exhausted, so to speak, unless if you are adding a certain variable. So it's very imperative for the student to talk to their professor or lecturer and they brainstorm and read lecture notes and recent issues of periodicals in the field that they've selected. It's highly unlikely that you'll set out to research on something which is completely new. So before you move on to step number 2, which I'm going to cover short, it's very important that when you are narrowing your research topic, you actually refine a research question. And when you refine this research question, the overarching research question, a research question which is like a bridge, which sort of mirrors your primary research objective. When you come up with this summative research question, which sort of ties in everything that you are going to do, so to speak. When you do that, after you have successfully done that with the approval of your research professor, or your dissertation supervisor, or your lecturer, you actually need to come up with a worksheet on how to approach this research question. I know there are quite a number of research questions under the main research question. You've got the primary research objective and secondary objectives. The main research question is a mirror reflection of the primary research objective. And then you have got what I may call sub-questions, which are also research questions, but they mirror your secondary research objectives. So you come up with a worksheet. It is this worksheet which will assist you in the next stage. In the next stage, or the next point, which is point number 2 in the tips in writing literature review, is that you need to use keywords to search a computer database. It is best to use at least 2 or 3 databases relevant to your discipline. This is not a rule cast on stone. Some researchers, even at undergraduate level, bachelor's degree level, or even at master's degree levels, they can use up to 4 or 5 search engines. 4 or 5 databases relevant to their discipline. It depends on your level of sophistication or skill or exposure to literature review. If you have been doing literature review as part of your taught modules, by the time you reach your applied research methodology course, or by the time you are doing your dissertation, you would be so experienced in writing literature review that you don't need to restrict yourself to at least 2 databases. You can have up to 4 or 5 databases, because by then you would have honed or sharpened your skills on how to select information using keywords from those different databases. And then you must remember that the reference lists of recent articles and reviews can lead to valuable papers. So you need to check the reference lists of the papers that you are reviewing. The reference lists of the papers that you are reviewing will be giving you pointers on the sort of materials that you need to read further in order to understand certain concepts that would have been summarized by the researchers whose material you are reading. And then you make certain that you also include any studies contrary to your point of view or contrary to their point of view. Because when you search for information, certain studies may come up which are biased in one direction. But you still need to investigate as a research whether there is no alternative view, or whether there is no 3rd or 4th or 5th or 10th view, whatever the case may be. And once you have ascertained that, you go to step number 3. And these steps, they are not really sequential steps, but they are just points to note. And they may be used concurrently, or one may be used earlier than the other. Here, I'm not presenting rules cast on stone, like someone who is climbing down a flight of stairs, that you start with this step, you go to this step. I'm just giving you points that you need to take into account. point number 3, when it comes to point number 3, it is very important that you focus your topic narrowly and select papers accordingly. You focus your topic narrowly. One thing which will happen the moment you start to read journal articles, you'll begin to read a lot of irrelevant information. Some of the information will be peripheral information on your research topic. So if you are not careful, you will end up coming up with a write-up or writing literature review, which is not really focused, which is really scattering attention all over the place. So it's very imperative for one to focus their topic narrowly and select papers accordingly. So the points to note are: 1, what interests you? Number 2, what interests others? Number 3, what time span of research will you consider? Number 4, the key issues and the key controversies that are included in your research topic or that are implied by your research topic as distilled from the research papers that you will be reviewing. And then the 4th point to note is that one must read the selected articles thoroughly and evaluate them. Over the past 4 or 5 years, we have had a very serious problem as lecturers and supervisors of research projects, especially at undergraduate and also at postgraduate, at bachelor's degree and also at master's degree levels. In any given year, you will be having 1 or 2 research projects where the student, instead of reading thoroughly selected articles and evaluating them, the student just does cut and paste. When you are reading their literature review chapter, you immediately become confused because you can't follow what the student is saying. The student will be just cutting and pasting. If you are an experienced researcher, you can tell when someone is not really writing anything, but they are cutting from the internet and trying to modify words, trying to reverse engineer words, and then they are trying to come up with a literature review chapter. And all of that can be easily deduced by just, applying any of these softwares, like Turnitin, like, the software that Google has made available for checking plagiarism check, and so many other softwares that exist that are at our disposal as, as seasoned researchers, as lecturers, as professors in the field. So I have to underscore that it's very important to read the selected articles thoroughly and evaluate them. When you skip this step and you try to write a literature review, I can bet you that you will be actually plagiarizing. Because there is no way in which you can write about something which you have not read. And there is no technology which can enable one to write literature review without actually reading the research articles. It's very imperative, ladies and gentlemen, that you and I, we read the research articles that comprise the literature that we want to review, in order for us to come up with a solid write-up, or in order for us to do a solid compilation on a particular research topic. And the points to note when you are reading journal articles or any other articles, textbooks, and so on, scholarly material on a particular topic are: what assumptions do most or some of the researchers seem to be making when they are articulating a certain issue or certain issues? The second point, what methodologies did they use in their own studies? What are the testing procedures, subjects, materials, and other things that they took into account, or variables that they took into account in conducting their studies? The third point, you evaluate and synthesize the research findings and conclusions that were drawn by these researchers. Their own research findings and their own research conclusions and your own conclusions about their own conclusions. That's how thorough and deep literature review has to be. And then you're not experts in the field in terms of names, or if you are doing a natural sciences study, laboratories that are frequently referenced. The more you do literature review, you will see the people who are actually pillars in a particular field, or people who are leading the pack, so to speak. These people are leading the pack, so to speak. They'll be cited by almost everyone that you are reviewing. They might even cite themselves, or you find a scholar citing himself or herself, not using the first person singular, but using, the academic way of citing oneself with name or with surname and year of publication. You discover the author is actually citing himself here. It's because the author would have contributed seminally or significantly in a particular field, and they'll be a leading light or scholar. And then you have to take note of conflicting theories, results, methodologies, and also conclusions in a particular field or in a particular issue. And you also watch out for certain popular theories, models, hypotheses, or theorems that impinge on your research topic. And then the fifth point to consider, is that you organize the selected papers by looking for patterns and by developing subtopics. Obviously, this takes into account and presupposes that you have thoroughly read your literature and you have made notes. And the points to note are findings that are common or contested in the literature, the controversies. The second point, 2 or 3 important trends in the research. It might be even 4 or 5 important trends in the research, depending on the depth or the breadth of your study. And then the third point to note, when you are organizing the selected papers by looking for patterns and by developing subtopics, is the most influential theories, as well as the most influential, principles or theorems. They might not be necessarily theories, but they might be theorems, especially when we are doing research which has got a lot to do with mathematics or a lot to do with statistics. You might not be necessarily looking at theories, but theorems. And then the sixth point to note in these tips for writing literature review is that you develop a working thesis. And this working thesis, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call a purpose statement. You develop a working thesis. You write 1 or 2 sentence statements that summarize the conclusion you have reached about the major trends and developments you see in the research that has to be done on your subject, especially when you are doing a master's degree dissertation or a PhD dissertation or thesis. Towards the end of your chapter, after you have done your review of conceptual issues and your review of empirical evidence, you may be required by your professor to write a statement just before you write the chapter summary, to come up with a statement which is sort of summarizing the major trends and developments that you see in the research that has to be done in your research area, or things that need to be considered. You will be indirectly telling us how your study will contribute to new knowledge. How your study will contribute to new knowledge. So when you are looking at thesis statements, there are many templates for writing thesis statements. Some templates, they provide a 2-step guide for writing thesis statements. And then you realize that there are actually 5 types of thesis statements. Actually 5 types of thesis statements. 5 types of thesis statements that are covered in the literature. So the 5 types of thesis statements, I may cover them as part of, a presentation that I'm going to later on. To make later on. As part of a presentation that I'm going to make later on, I may cover the 5 types of thesis statements. Suffice it to say that it's very imperative at this stage for one to be in a position to actually articulate to us a working thesis, or to develop for us a working thesis. And then the 7th point is that one must organize their own paper or material based on the findings from step 4 and 5. Step 4 was telling us that you read the selected articles thoroughly and evaluate them. And step number 5 was telling us that you organize the selected papers by looking for patterns and trends, and by developing subtopics. And then the 8th point to consider is that you write the body of the paper or the chapter, because by then you will have familiarized yourself with the literature in a particular field. And then the ninth point to consider is that you look at what you have written, you focus your analysis, you focus on analysis and not description. So it's very imperative when you are conducting literature review that you don't dwell a lot on description. There is no value to be added when you are just describing what other authors are saying, or when you are describing a phenomenon. You have to be analytical. At a certain point, I may do a short lecture on the difference between description and analysis, the primary differences, because we have had lots of problems where students, they just describe certain variables. They are not analytical. It's just more of a description. And then the 10th point to note, or to the 9th point, I mean to say, before I go to the 10th point to note, is that you look at what you have written, focus on analysis and description. This is the point that I just covered. And the last point, ladies and gentlemen, is that you do post-write-up evaluation and you refine your work. You refine your work, you look at your subtopics, you redo your subtopics if necessary, in the light of what you have covered, from the introduction of your literature review up to the chapter summary or the conclusion of your literature review. I believe that this presentation has benefited you. Remember to like and to like this video, to comment on this video if necessary, and even to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed to my channel. Thank you so much for listening in.